Betrayal, the stars had never looked so cold as they did through the cracked viewport of the UES Redemption. Commander Elena Torres pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, watching the debris field that had once been Kepler Station drift silently through the void. 3 months ago, this had been humanity's proudest achievement in space, a massive research and defense facility that protected the outer colonies. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and frozen atmosphere, a graveyard, floating in the darkness. Commander, incoming transmission from Earth Command, Lieutenant Sarah Chen called from the communication station. Her voice carried the same hollow tone they all shared now. 3 months of running, hiding, and watching their people die had drained something essential from each of them. Elena turned away from the viewport. The Redemption's bridge was cramped, designed for a crew of 12, but currently housing the 47 survivors of what had once been the 47th Human Expeditionary Force. 15,000 soldiers, engineers, scientists, and support staff had been stationed at Kepler Station when the Nexus War began. Only 47 had made it out alive. "Put it through," Elena said, settling into the captain's chair. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Harrison, his grey hair perfectly styled despite the early morning hour. On Earth, behind him, Elena could see the familiar blue and green of home through his office window. It seemed like another universe entirely. "Commander Tokis," Admiral Harrison began, his voice carrying across the light years with crystal clarity. "The Joint Command Council has reviewed your after-action report regarding the Kepler Station incident." Incident? Elena's jaw tightened. They were calling the systematic abandonment and slaughter of 15,000 human beings an incident. With respect, Admiral, it wasn't an incident. It was betrayal. Harrison's expression didn't change. "Commander, I understand you've been through a traumatic experience. The loss of Kepler Station was unfortunate, but we must consider the larger strategic picture. The Korathian Empire remains our most valuable ally in the war against the Nexus." Collective Elena felt her hands clench into fists. The Korathians had been humanity's first contact with advanced alien civilization 5 years ago. Tall, elegant beings with chitinous exoskeletons and compound eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. They had arrived at Earth's doorstep with offers of alliance and shared technology, when the machine intelligence, known as the Nexus Collective, had begun its expansion into this galaxy, consuming entire worlds and converting their populations into cybernetic drones. The Korathians had stood beside humanity as partners in resistance, or so they had claimed. "Admiral, they left us to die," Elena said, her voice steady but cold. "War Commander Velterus gave us his personal assurance that Korathian forces would maintain the defensive perimeter while we evacuated civilians from the research levels. Instead, their entire fleet jumped to hyperspace the moment the Nexus Collective arrived in force. Lieutenant Chen had been there during those final hours. She'd watched through the station's sensors as sleek Korathian warships, their hulls gleaming like silver insects in the starlight, had simply vanished into hyperspace without so much as a warning message. 15 minutes later, Nexus drone ships had swarmed through the gap in their defenses like angry wasps. "The Korathians have explained their actions," Admiral Harrison continued. "Their tactical analysis indicated that Kepler Station was indefensible. A strategic withdrawal saved their fleet from destruction and preserved our alliance's long-term capabilities." "Their analysis was wrong," Elena snapped. "We held that station for 16 hours against overwhelming odds. 16 hours, Admiral. If they had stayed, if they had honored their commitment, we could have evacuated everyone." Instead, they ran at the first sign of real danger and left human soldiers to buy their escape with their lives. She remembered those 16 hours with painful clarity. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had somehow kept the reactor running even after Nexus energy weapons had shredded half the power grid. Medical Officer Park had worked tirelessly in the emergency treatment centers, trying to save wounded civilians while Nexus boarding pods hammered against the hull like metallic rain. Captain Morrison had led 3 separate counterattacks against Nexus drones that had breached the outer hull, buying precious time for evacuation, shuttles that would never come. They had all died believing that help was coming. They had all died because the Carathians had decided that human lives were an acceptable price for their own safety. Admiral Harrison leaned forward slightly. "Commander, you're speaking about our allies. The Carathian Empire has provided us with advanced technology, strategic intelligence, and military support. Without them, Earth itself would have fallen to the Nexus Collective months ago. And what good is their support if they abandon us when we need it most?" Alina shot back. "Admiral, I was there. I watched 15,000 people die because the Carathians couldn't be bothered to honor their word. How many more humans are going to die because we can't trust our allies to actually fight alongside us?" The Admiral's expression hardened. "Commander, you're walking very close to insubordination. The Joint Command Council has accepted the Carathian explanation and considers the matter closed. Your orders are to return to Earth for debriefing and reassignment. The 47th Expeditionary Force is being officially dissolved." Alina felt something cold settle in her chest. They were going to sweep it under the rug. 15,000 human lives, and the politicians were going to pretend it never happened to preserve their precious alliance. "Understood, Admiral," she said quietly. "We'll be home within the week." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Alina stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then became aware that every eye on the bridge was watching her. These 46 men and women had followed her through hell. They had trusted her to get them home alive, and somehow she had managed it. Now they were waiting to see what she would do next. "Lieutenant Chen, get me a secure channel to General Marcus Kane at Special Operations Command," Alina said finally. Chen's fingers danced over her console. Marcus Kane was a legend in military circles. A man who had built his reputation fighting in shadows and forgotten corners of human space. If anyone would understand what needed to be done, it would be him. "Channel open, Commander. Encryption is military grade." The screen flickered to life again, revealing a scarred face with steel-grey eyes and close-cropped white hair. General Kane looked exactly like what he was, a man who had spent 40 years fighting humanity's enemies by any means necessary. "Alina," he said simply, "I heard about Kepler Station. I'm sorry, Marcus, they're covering it up. Harrison just told me the matter is closed." Kane nodded slowly. "I figured they might. Too much invested in the Carathian alliance to risk it. Over one battle." One battle. Alina felt her voice rise. 15,000 people died because our allies decided we were expendable, and now we're supposed to just pretend it never happened. Kane was quiet for a moment, his grey eyes studying her face through the transmission. Finally, he spoke. "Alina, what are you asking me?" She looked around the bridge at the faces of her survivors. Each of them bore scars from Kepler Station. Lieutenant Chen had lost her left arm to Nexus energy fire and now wore a prosthetic. Sergeant Williams had radiation burns across half his face from a reactor leak. They all carried invisible wounds that would never fully heal. I'm asking if you're interested in making sure something like this never happens again, Elena said. I'm asking if you think the Carathians should face consequences for what they did. Kane smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Elena, are you suggesting we take matters into our own hands? I'm suggesting that if our government won't hold our allies accountable, maybe someone else should. Kane was quiet for another long moment. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. There's a facility on Luna, Sublevel 7 of the Shackleton Research Complex. It's officially listed as storage space, but it's actually where we house operations that don't officially exist. If you and your people are interested in pursuing justice through unofficial channels, I might be able to arrange something. Elena felt her pulse quicken. What kind of something? The kind where we make sure the galaxy understands that humanity doesn't forget betrayal. The kind where consequences have a way of finding people even when they think they're safe. Kane's smile grew colder. The kind where we tear down empires that are built on human bones. Elena looked round the bridge again. Her survivors were listening to every word, and she could see the same cold anger in their eyes that she felt burning in her chest. They had all lost friends at Kepler Station. They had all watched good people die because aliens had decided human lives were worthless. General Kane, Elena said formally, the survivors of the 47th Human Expeditionary Force would like to volunteer for whatever mission you have in mind. Kane nodded approvingly. Outstanding. Transmitting coordinates now. Welcome to the Shadow Protocol, Commander. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you betray humanity. As the transmission ended, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since Kepler Station. Hope. The politicians might be willing to forget 15,000 dead humans, but she wasn't. None of them were. The Carathians thought they had gotten away with their betrayal, thought they could abandon humanity when it suited them and face no consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her console. Course plotted for Luna, Commander. We can be there in 18 hours. Elena settled back into her captain's chair, watching the stars wheel past the viewport. Somewhere out there, War Commander Velterus and his fellow Carathians were probably congratulating themselves on their successful strategic withdrawal. They thought they were safe in their crystal cities and orbital fortresses. Take us home, Lieutenant Elena said quietly. We have work to do. The UES Redemption turned away from the debris field that had once been Kepler Station and accelerated toward the inner system. Behind them, the dead drifted silently through space, their sacrifice forgotten by politicians but remembered by the living. The Carathians had betrayed humanity once and gotten away with it. They would not get away with it twice. Asterisk. The reckoning 5 years had passed since Kepler Station, and the galaxy had learned to fear the shadows. Dr. Sarah Chen, now sporting the rank insignia of a Shadow Protocol operative, stood in the observation deck of the hidden base carved deep into Luna's southern pole. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum, she could see the orbital yards where sleek black ships were being fitted with weapons that didn't officially exist. The Shadow Protocol had grown far beyond the 47 survivors of the 47th Expeditionary Force. Hundreds of humans now served in the secret organization, all united by a simple understanding. Betrayal had consequences. Impressive sight, isn't it? General Kane approached from behind, his footsteps silent on the metal deck. The years had added more grey to his hair and more lines to his face, but his steel-grey eyes remained as sharp as ever. The Carathians still think we're their loyal allies, Sarah replied without turning around. Their intelligence reports show no awareness of our activities. Good. Let them keep thinking that right up until the moment we tear their empire apart. Kane joined her at the observation window. Status report on Operation Payback. Sarah smiled, and it was an expression that would have chilled the blood of any Corinthian who saw it. Phase 1 is complete. We've successfully infiltrated key positions throughout their government and military hierarchy. Agent Rodriguez has been working as a technical advisor in their Ministry of War for 3 years now. Agent Williams is embedded in their high command as a liaison officer. They trust us completely. Kane nodded approvingly. The infiltration had been Elena Torres's idea, implemented during the 2nd year of the Shadow Protocol's existence. Rather than striking immediately, they had chosen to play a longer game. Human operatives, their identities carefully crafted and their backgrounds meticulously fabricated, had sought positions throughout Corinthian society. The aliens had been happy to accept human expertise, never suspecting that their new friends were gathering intelligence and preparing for revenge. And Phase 2, Kane asked. Initiated yesterday. Corinthian Defense Fleet Admiral Zixkith received orders to deploy the 3rd Battle Group to patrol the Outer Rim sectors. The orders appeared to come from War Commander Velteris himself, complete, with proper authentication codes. Kane raised an eyebrow. Where is the 3rd Battle Group actually being deployed? Sarah's smile widened. The Nexus Collective Border. Specifically, to a system where our intelligence indicates a major Nexus fleet is preparing to attack Corinthian mining operations. And Admiral Zixkith doesn't know about the Nexus presence. The intelligence reports we provided him indicate the system is lightly defended by automated mining platforms. He's expecting to spend a quiet week on patrol while collecting hazard pay for operating near Nexus space. Kane laughed, a sound with no humor in it. How many ships? 47, Sarah said quietly. 1 for each survivor of Kepler Station. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. The 3rd Battle Group was one of the Corinthian Empire's elite formations, equipped with their most advanced warships and crewed by their finest officers. In a few days, they would jump into a system expecting routine patrol duty and instead find themselves facing a Nexus collective assault fleet that outnumbered them 3-1. Poetic justice, Kane murmured. They left us outnumbered and abandoned. At Kepler Station, now they get to experience the same sensation. That's just the beginning, Sarah continued. Our economic specialists have been working with Corinthian financial institutions for 2 years now, helping them optimize their trade networks and investment strategies. Yesterday, we activated certain embedded protocols in their banking systems. Kane turned to face her fully. Explain. Every major Corinthian bank just discovered that their primary currency reserves have been transferred to accounts controlled by human refugee organizations. Officially, it appears to be a massive computer error caused by outdated human-designed financial software. Unofficially, the Corinthian economy just lost approximately 40% of its liquid assets. Kane whistled low. How long before their economy collapses? Conservative estimate, 6 months. Their government is already implementing emergency rationing protocols. By year's end, there will be riots in the streets of every major Corinthian world. Through the observation window, Sarah could see another ship leaving the hidden yards. The vessel looked like a standard merchant freighter, but its cargo hold was filled with some of humanity's most advanced stealth technology. It would spend the next several weeks placing monitoring devices throughout Corinthian space, ensuring that the Shadow Protocol could track every fleet movement and government communication in real time. "There's more," Sarah said. "We've located War Commander Velteris." Kane's expression hardened. "Where?" Corinthian High Command rotated him to a diplomatic position after Kepler Station. Officially, it was a promotion in recognition of his strategic acumen. Unofficially, even they were uncomfortable with what he did. He's currently serving as military attaché to the Corinthian Embassy on Arcturus Prime. Kane was quiet for a long moment, his grey eyes distant. "Alina wants him alive. I know. That's why we haven't moved against him yet. But Marcus, he's heavily guarded. Corinthian security is extremely sophisticated, and Arcturus Prime is a heavily monitored diplomatic world. Any attempt to extract him risks exposure of the entire operation." "Then we don't extract him," Kane said simply. "We bring him to us." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, an alarm chimed throughout the base. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red as personnel moved to battle stations with practiced efficiency. Kane touched his communicator. "Control, report. General, we're receiving a priority transmission from Commander Torres. The package has been delivered." Kane smiled coldly. "Put her through." The wall display activated, showing Alina Torres in the command center of a ship Sarah didn't recognize. Alina had changed over the past 5 years, her features harder and her eyes colder. But she still carried herself with the same quiet authority that had gotten 47 people safely out of hell. Marcus, Sarah, Alina nodded to them both. "Operation Judgment is complete. War Commander Velteris is secured aboard my ship and en route to Luna." Sarah blinked in surprise. "How did you... Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "We didn't extract him from Arcturus Prime. We convinced the Corinthian High Command to recall him to Corinthia Prime for emergency consultation regarding the third battle group situation. His transport was unfortunately attacked by Nexus Collective raiders while en route. Very tragic. No survivors except for the War Commander himself, who was rescued by a human patrol vessel that happened to be in the area." Kane laughed appreciatively. "The Carathians requested the rescue. They practically begged us to save him. Apparently Velteris is one of their most experienced strategic minds, and they desperately need his expertise to deal with the crisis facing their empire." Elena's expression grew darker. "They have no idea how much worse that crisis is about to become." Sarah felt a chill of anticipation. 5 years of careful planning were finally coming to fruition. The Carathians, who had abandoned 15,000 humans to die, were about to discover that betrayal carried a price they couldn't afford to pay. "ETA to Luna?" Kane asked. 18 hours. "I thought you might want to prepare a proper welcome for our guest." Kane nodded. "The tribunal chamber is ready. Sarah, notify all Shadow Protocol personnel that Operation Payback enters Phase 3 upon Commander Torres' arrival." The transmission ended, leaving Kane and Sarah alone in the observation deck. Through the window, more black ships were departing the hidden yards, each carrying teams of operatives to their assigned positions throughout Corinthian space. By the time War Commander Velteris arrived at Luna, the final phase of humanity's revenge would already be in motion. "Do you think he'll confess?" Sarah asked quietly. Kane was quiet for a moment, watching the ships disappear into the star-filled darkness. "He'll confess, but that's not really the point anymore. The point is that the galaxy needs to understand what happens when humanity is betrayed. We've spent 5 years proving that we have long memories and longer reach. Now it's time to demonstrate that we also deliver justice. 18 hours later, War Commander Velturus knelt in chains before a tribunal of humans he had left to die. The chamber was carved from Luna's rock, its walls inscribed with the names of every person who had perished at Kepler Station. Alina Torres sat at the center of the tribunal, flanked by Kane and Sarah. Around the chamber's perimeter, the 47 survivors of the 47th Expeditionary Force stood in silent witness. Velturus looked smaller than Sarah remembered, his chitinous exoskeleton dulled with age, and his compound eyes reflecting the harsh lights with less brilliance than before. He had not spoken since being brought before the tribunal, but she could see the fear in his alien features. War Commander Velturus, Alina began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. You stand accused of betrayal, cowardice, and the murder of 15,000 human beings. How do you answer these charges? Velturus raised his head slowly. I was following orders. The strategic situation required immediate withdrawal to preserve Alliance assets. Whose orders? Alina pressed. The High Command. The Emperor himself authorized the withdrawal. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction. Velturus had just confirmed what their intelligence had suggested for years. The betrayal at Kepler Station hadn't been a field commander's panic decision. It had been deliberate policy from the highest levels of the Corinthian government. So, the entire Corinthian leadership knew they were abandoning human forces to certain death. Elena said. It wasn't a question. Velturus was quiet for a long moment. Then, barely audible, yes. Kane leaned forward. War Commander, do you understand why you're here? You're going to kill me for following orders. No, Kane said quietly. We're going to broadcast your trial to every inhabited world in this galaxy. We're going to make sure everyone understands exactly what the Corinthian Empire is willing to do to its allies. And then we're going to watch your civilization collapse under the weight of its own betrayal. As if summoned by his words, displays throughout the chamber activated, showing scenes from across Corinthian space. The third battle group's remnants limping away from a devastating encounter with Nexus forces. Riots in Corinthian cities as economic collapse spread. Government officials being arrested by their own security forces as the Empire began to tear itself apart. Your Empire is dying, War Commander, Alina said softly. The galaxy is learning not to trust species that abandon their allies. Trade. Partnerships are being dissolved. Defense treaties are being revoked. Your colonies are declaring independence rather than remain associated with the Corinthian name. Sarah watched Velturus' compound eyes reflect the images of his dying empire. The plan had worked perfectly. The Carathians had betrayed humanity, thinking there would be no consequences. They had been wrong. Why? Velturus whispered. Alina stood, her shadow falling across the kneeling alien. Because humanity remembers. Because betrayal has consequences. Because the galaxy needed to learn that some prices are too high to pay. She gestured to the names carved into the walls around them. 15,000 people died because you decided their lives were worth less than your ships. Now your entire empire is paying the price for that decision. Velturus looked up at her, and Sarah could see something like understanding in his alien features. This was never about justice. This was about revenge. Alina smiled, and it was the coldest expression Sarah had ever seen. Justice is revenge. With better marketing, War Commander, the result is the same either way. As the trial continued, broadcast across the galaxy in real time, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The Carathians had thought they could betray humanity and walk away unscathed. They had learned otherwise. Every species in the galaxy was learning the same lesson. Humanity did not forgive. Humanity did not forget, and humanity always collected its debts. The age of casual betrayal was over. The age of consequences had begun.